You want to live a life on fire and on mission. You want to be filled with such conviction and drive that you stop caring about what anyone thinks. You want to face each day alive, authentic, and fully present in every moment. With your wife, with your kids, on the street, at work. You want to bring yourself to the table and to stop bringing the watered-down, nice, what everyone wants version of you. You want that self to be a man who is burning in passion for Jesus, unafraid to bring his kingdom to anyone in your path, no matter what it costs you. You want to love the one in front of you without fear, without needing love back, and without reserve. You want to husband well. You want to father well. You want to shepherd your life well. You want to be a safe pillar for anybody around you. You want to experience God for real, to not just believe, but to know that he's got you, and that he'll show up on your behalf, that he'll show up through you. You want to get to the end of your race and say, yep, I gave it everything. Jesus, you know I'm all in. And you want to know just how to get there. Welcome to Man Warrior King. I'm your host, Matt Halleck. Congratulations. You're among the violent taking the kingdom by force. You're among the chosen answering the call to rise above yourself. You're in the forge being stripped down and strengthened, and you will rise stronger, solid, unshakable. You are a man. You're a warrior. You are a king. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Man Warrior King podcast. I'm your host, Matt Halleck. I'm the founder of Man Warrior King, the author of The DNA of a Man, and I am here in the studio of our bedroom tonight with my wife, Corrie. She has gone through so much of the building process of the Man Warrior King movement. She's like the other part of it that's going on behind the scenes that you don't see, that you don't know about when I'm talking on the podcast and things like that. And obviously I reference her a lot, but when you hear from me about all of the learning and struggle and garbage that I went through, she's the one who had to often pick up that garbage. And this is the second time I've remembered this in like the last week, and I don't think about it very often, but in all of our like 15 years of going to doctors and stuff, many of them have said that, wow, it's amazing, Corrie, that you are here, right here in this, as dedicated, as loving, as with Matt as you are, because they've seen wife or husband, whatever it is, spouse after spouse after spouse, walk out when their spouse is dealing with sickness because of all of that kind of muck that I have dealt with and she has had to go through. Now, we're not going to talk about that tonight, but I want you to know that the strength that you see in me is largely because of how she has loved me in the ugliest and worst times, and even been willing to have sex with me when I've not been attractive. Let's just be real. And that's what we're talking about tonight, is sex when you're not attractive. Oh, gosh. No, not that, but sex. And this is actually a big deal for both of us. Not just because it's fun, but because it's actually something that Corrie is really passionate about. She's passionate about the exposing the truth of sex. And that's what we want to talk about. We're kicking off a series. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be. It might just be one really long episode, but I doubt it. It's going to be a couple few on truth you should have been told about married sex. But, Corrie, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk about sex with you. We want to talk about a couple of books that you've read, right? So what are those books? Who wrote them? Why are they important to you?
Okay. Well, we've read a lot of books, right, about marriage and stuff like that. Am I being loud enough? Maybe.
No.
Oh, we've read a lot of books. But years ago, at the probably fairly early in our marriage, I think we were living with your mom the first time. So I think like 2013-ish, 2012. I read a book called The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex by Sheila Ray Gregoire, I think.
It's always kind of a hard last name to say.
She lives in Canada, so I imagine it's like a French name. But so yeah, The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex. And I remember just appreciating that book so much because I was still in the postpartum season after our first baby and just feeling very out of touch with my own body, out of place in my body. And that was at that time causing a lot of conflict for you and I. I think we didn't have much education about how to navigate that season. And Sheila in that book just talked so openly and honestly, but also so hope-filledly about how good married sex is supposed to be. And at that time, that kind of was refreshing to hear because, there's all the excitement and no, stop it of before marriage. And then after marriage and a baby, you start to just feel like, oh my gosh, I must be so boring. And yet here she was championing that it should be getting better and it should be getting like more fulfilling. And that was really encouraging at that time. So I was very excited a couple months ago to discover that last year she wrote a new book called The Great Sex Rescue. And I read that one. I ordered it like the day I found out about it. And it was here a couple days later. And I read it super fast. And it was also just really incredible. This book was totally different, though. It was less of a how-to. And in this book, she and her team, she's got a couple people who work with her, they surveyed, I think like 22,000 married evangelical women, asking them questions about teachings that they have learned in evangelical church regarding sex, regarding their bodies, etc., and kind of compared and contrasted their response questions with how happy and satisfied and connected they felt in their marriages also. So that book was really fascinating, kind of sadly fascinating in a way, because some of the findings of their surveys were disappointing, and I think the church could do better than it's doing. And I think that we have a pretty low bar for married Christian sex. And that's kind of scary. So yeah, this is not necessarily just a giant commercial for this book, but then I handed it to you and I was like, oh my gosh, you should read this book. And you have been, you're busy, so slowly reading it. But, and then they are about to release, I'm on the pre-order team. So I already have started reading mine because now I'm like a big fan. Because she just rewrote that first book that I read, The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, and her husband wrote a book, The Good Guy's Guide to Great Sex, and that's the one I'm reading right now. I'm reading the book for men. I'm learning a lot.
She's cheating.
I'm like, what? So I just thought I'd like to get a different perspective. So yeah, I just have really enjoyed looking at that. And I feel like for you and I, even though you and I have done a lot of work over the course of 3 babies and 15 years of marriage to figure out what we believe about sex and what we're going to be pursuing as far as connection getting better. But so to read some of these statistics, on the one hand, it's kind of nice when you read a statistic and you're like, oh, good. I'm on like the good end of that statistic. Like, thank God. But on the other hand, it just has brought up really some good discussion points for you and I for me to even be able to identify like, oh, I did think that unhealthy thing. Like, where did I learn that? Like, why did I think that there was this, this expectation on wives more than husbands or whatever, to just put out or however you want to say it. But why did I think that it was married sex was kind of more for the husband than the wife? Or why did I think that it was kind of that the burden fell to the wife a little bit to help keep her husband from porn? Like, where did I get those things from? Yeah. And so for you and I to get to discuss that has been just kind of interesting and fun, and brought up some good stuff for us of just digging into our mindsets and how we got how maybe these things were kind of programmed into us. And was it the church? Was it, I think it kind of was. I mean, kind of Christian culture, maybe not like from the pulpit, but kind of Christian culture,
just
I
like
suppose.
Absorbing it in from all angles in the Christian world, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's the pulpit or just random offhand conversations or comments,
or even just like down to like, remember how I was telling you about like how long the section is for a girl's dress code going to high school camp versus how long a boy's dress code section is. All that, like, girls, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. You will be sent home for this, you will be sent home for this, you will be sent home for this. And then for boys, it's like you have to, like, you can't show your underwear. You can't
show up naked.
Yeah, basically. It's like something a boy would never do. But, it's like all these stipulations for, oh, this is funny. All these stipulations for, like, what a girl can and can't wear as far as a swimsuit. Like at high school camp, we had to wear a swimsuit with shorts over it and a t-shirt, a dark t-shirt over that. That's how we had to swim at high school Christian camp. Meanwhile, it wasn't always like super hot at camp, and then we do like the polar bear swim and stuff like that. And I remember thinking like, oh, hello boys, like cold much? Like, and and I was very sheltered, so I was like, oh my gosh, there are penises everywhere, right? Because because these boys and their
we're gonna mark this episode explicit now.
These cold little willies were like, God. And but why was that?
Don't they disappear then?
No, I don't know.
I'm just trying to figure out 2 + 2 = 5.
I don't know. So they're like, because like, I don't know, just like boys swimsuits. I don't know. It just was like made everything very prevalent, but in a way that would not have been allowed for girls. So why was that allowed for boys? Why didn't they have to wear like extra shorts on top of their swim shorts? They weren't like wearing Speedos or anything either. So it was just like, why?
Right.
Why wasn't that a big issue? Right. The difference between that showing versus a girl
who's cold
also, like
in a wet something
like, so even in just that, there's like these strange kind of double standards that start to take a toll on a girl. Like, oh, I have to cover up, but none of these boys do. Right. And because I'm so dangerously attractive. However, it was high school camp. I was still attracted to the boys and like all their cute little washboard abs, probably super skinny little teenage boys, but my teenage self found that attractive, right? So why didn't they have to wear shirts? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
So that kind of thing, coupled with teachings, coupled with just various upbringing styles and stuff, kind of gave this weird, twisted view of sexuality, especially for a girl. And what you said, like, it was hammering into your head, you have to cover up, you have to cover up, you have to cover up. Which, okay, I understand, but that's bad news for a husband later when his wife has been told, you have to cover up, you have to cover up, you have to cover up.
Right. And these books and this author, Sheila, and on her podcast, The Bare Marriage, she talks about this a lot of times too, and just like how in Christian culture, girls and young women are trained to be, and even told that they are the gatekeepers, and trained to be the gatekeepers. And so we literally train ourselves, like, as soon as we feel too much desire or whatever, to like shut it down.
Ugh.
And because there is actual teaching in the Christian church of like, once guys hit a certain turn on point, they like kind of can't stop.
So it's the girl's responsibility to keep sex from happening. And then all of a sudden, after you put a ring on, now
it's the girl's responsibility to give it up. Mm-hmm.
Now it's the girl's responsibility to feed the husband.
Right.
And, okay, so a couple of things that came up for me as you were talking. First of all, in our history, one thing that I have not done well, that I am working to do more and more, is to celebrate the fact that I am really lucky to have you in sex. Like you are more than enough for me in that. And as you were talking, I was thinking, man, so many of these guys who are listening don't have a wife at the moment who would be eagerly looking to get in on the release date of a sex book. And first of all, that makes me feel really fortunate and lucky that that this is something that you actually really care about, because there are a lot of guys who listen who might be in a position where their wife is not in that place at the moment. And that's a painful place to be for both of them.
Yeah.
But for the guys who are listening, feeling like, well, I wish my wife would X, Y, or Z, like that's tough to be there. And I'm thankful for you.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of, I think even for the women who maybe don't feel like they're there, they probably are more than it seems. I mean, I think from what I know from my friends who I've spoken with and asked questions of and, compared notes with, because women talk, and then from these books, the findings of the survey and stuff like that, I would say, actually, if women knew about this book, they probably would be lining up for it, because there is a chasm of need, and there's a great chasm of kind of sadness. A lot of women report feeling like marriage was kind of a bait and switch. And so I think that I would challenge any husbands who are like, oh man, my wife or ex-wife or, we're separated or whatever. Gosh, I wish she would be pursuing this. I would just personally hesitate. And I'm not like telling you you're wrong, but I would just personally hesitate to assume from the standpoint of a husband that your wife isn't wanting to. I think some of the damage that has been done, it takes a while to undo. and to even rewire us, because I know for myself and for a lot of women, we've heard the narrative so many times, like, oh, well, I could give or take, but it's my husband who wants it. And it's been told to us by women older than us, sometimes by our mothers. It's kind of a joke. It's a sitcom joke. It's always, and if you tell someone something enough, they'll start to believe it's true.
Right.
Case in point, COVID. But so if you tell people enough that,
Please don't ban this podcast.
danger, everybody freak out, they'll start to freak out. A lot of people start to freak out. So if you tell people enough, if you tell women enough, you really, as you get older, you're going to become less sexual, or, you're less sexual when you're having kids and stuff like that. Too bad. You need to do it anyways. But that's because it's for your husband, not for you. And if that gets told to women enough, they will start to believe it. Right. So I don't think what we have here is a problem of women not wanting to want sex.
Right.
It's a problem of women not knowing that it could be for them.
And that's why I use the words very intentionally. Hold on. Checking the recording. Okay. That's why I use the words very intentionally of some guys whose wives may not be in this place yet at the moment, because it's not, that's a thing that I want to talk about a bit. Like it's not that your wife is not sexual.
Right.
It's not that she just is a cold, frigid B word and you married the wrong person. That's not the way it is. And there's a massive web of garbage that has to be untangled in the Christian, and in particular the Christian world and the Christian mindset. And as Corrie was reading this book and talking to me about these things that they were finding that are taught in the church and stuff like that, I was like blown away, because it's actually been quite a long time since I've read a Christian marriage book, because I didn't find a lot of help in them. Yeah. And I've been studying more just books written by people that I really respect that aren't coming from the churchy mindset. And so this stuff was just ridiculous. So here's the problem that, as I see it, for you, sir, who are listening. There is probably the real truth, the real fact that your wife doesn't show a desire for you at the moment, possibly because of things that you have done and ways that you have been. Right? In the man world out there, outside the church, we don't have a lot of this garbage teaching that says that it's the woman's job to keep the man sexually satisfied, and it's mostly for him and not for her. Out there in the world, it's, if your wife doesn't want you, it's probably because she just doesn't want you, not that she doesn't want sex. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Or she doesn't want the way you're being.
Exactly. It's not that she doesn't want the entirety of you, but with who you're being right now, where you've lived as a little boy instead of as a man or whatever, there's things that you are doing or have done that are things that you need to work to change, to transform, and ask the Holy Spirit to come in and give a completely new face to your masculinity. But then on the other hand, there's that could be working against your sexual fulfillment. But then there's also all of this other stuff that a Christian woman typically has been downloaded into, like about her role in sex, about sex itself, about whether she is even sexual or not, like Corrie was saying, like you're saying, like if you're just getting told over and over and over that you're not. And so we, like, I think this in a lot of ways, we as Christians who are married almost are at a disadvantage in this area in some ways compared to those who don't have all of this Christian teaching. So,
Well, sorry.
go ahead. No, yeah.
I was going to say some of the disadvantage. I mean, it's been, and the actual numbers of this are in this book and stuff like that, but it's been a well-known fact for a long time that Christian women experience more pain in intercourse than non-Christian women.
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Actual physical pain. More instances of, I think it's called like vaginosis or something like that. Literally, there's a higher incidence of it within religious circles. I think that pertains to all religions. I think that would like Islam, and like Mormonism. It's all like strict religions. I'm pretty sure. So in religious circles, Judaism, I imagine, like women experience more pain than outside. And that is just like, oh, like that makes my blood boil because that is so unkingdom. That's so ungod.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
That's super jacked up.
Because we talk about a lot, the kingdom is a both and kind of a kingdom. It's
right.
Both the husband can be completely fulfilled and love what's happening in sex, and the wife can love what's happening in sex and be completely fulfilled. It's not it's for the man, and therefore the wife has to suffer because of it.
I would posit that maybe possibly within marriage, there is no my fulfillment and your fulfillment when it comes to sex. It's our fulfillment, right? And so that puts a whole new light on how to look on it. It's not just like, well, I need my needs met. It's we together need to discover what our needs are and how to meet them together. So it should be the entire conversation has to change instead of just like, look, you got to meet his needs or, whatever.
So yeah, I want to talk about that the idea. So there's the verse. The verse. From 1 Corinthians 7. It says, do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. It says, okay, so we have this verse, do not deprive one another. How can we reconcile that verse with the idea that's out there that says that sex is mostly or just for the man?
And do not deprive him.
And there's that thought, there's that teaching, like people literally quote this verse and then go right into saying, so wives, like, don't deprive your husband. Instead of talking about this is for both spouses, don't deprive each other. See, I hate it because it tells us, like, the teachings that are out there say that, because the wife isn't sexual. How could she be deprived if it's not even something that she wants?
Right.
So it's mostly
so I'm not
wives
gonna
don't deprive your husband.
Because then it becomes so overly like like compartmentalized. So then it's like, why husbands don't deprive your wife of, like, she wants help around the house. She wants help with the kids. She wants flowers. She wants like love. And then it's like, don't deprive her of that. And those things are all really good. Although I have thoughts about them all. But
those are probably in our other.
Well, just the phraseology of help her around the house as if it's her responsibility. And the husband's like, I am here to help you, instead of just like, freaking participate. So even that, I use that terminology on purpose, right? But those are the admonitions given to men for how to, like, don't deprive your wife of like the love and the kindness that she needs. But this is going to make this podcast even more explicit, but like there's a big, basically, orgasm gap between men and women in Christian marriages also. And how often it is happening for one and how often it is happening for another. By the numbers, women are being deprived in Christian marriages right now. And that is something that like should put a screeching halt to everything else. Like, husbands, go figure out how to do this. Like, stop depriving your wives. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
And because it's really very rare clinically to have a woman who just like cannot ever.
Right. So that's a cop out. And
So it's a cop out.
That's not to cheapen anybody with extenuating circumstances.
Who have their story. Right.
Right. So everybody's story is unique, but
just in general,
that's a cop out.
Well, in general, by the numbers, there's a huge gap.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we should be satisfied with that gap.
I don't know why any man in his right mind would be satisfied thinking sex is just for me. My wife doesn't really want it. That doesn't make sense.
Well,
it's no fun if you aren't in it.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's severely affecting, for both husbands and wives who responded in this survey, it's affecting their closeness in marriage and their closeness in sex.
Yeah.
And because the numbers on that aren't super great, and it correlates. If one or the other is not, finishing,
it's okay. We can say
having
an orgasm.
We've passed the point of
it's
no
one of
return.
our favorite words anyway.
Oh, gross.
It is. Just be real.
If one or the other isn't completing, though, then it's like the numbers correlate with their satisfaction in marriage, and that's just really sad.
But that's the thing, is that here, this is another area, it's the same area, but where the Christian church produces a hopelessness for both. It's not just for the wives or just for the men, it's for both. But as coming from a man's point of view, there is a hopelessness to the, maybe going so far as to say, doctrine that a wife probably most likely doesn't really want sex very much. That produces hopelessness because most men, if not every man that I talk to, wants to feel wanted, not just out in the kitchen and the living room with the kids and stuff like that. He wants to feel wanted in the bedroom, in sex.
And not just like when you're trying to conceive.
No.
Or, it's like
animal desire. And then outside the church, you have people talking about, okay, so how do we get there? How do we create that animal desire in the context of your marriage? But inside the church, it's like, no, that's normal. This is a woman's duty, and it's a man's need.
Well, that's,
And this verse makes it sound like it's a need for both. And what you're saying sounds like it's a need for both. There's a gap in orgasm frequency, which causes a lot of
and in the church.
yeah.
More than outside
the church. And that causes a lot of marital dissatisfaction. I would say, given the crappy divorce rate in the church, I would say all standard Christian marriage teachings should be on the chopping block. They should
be suspect.
They should have to earn their stripes. Honestly. So if we've been inherited thinking about sex from how we've grown up, from what we've been taught in the church, from what we've read in prominent Christian marriage books, we should probably halt everything and reevaluate. You want to know where you should think about sex from? Okay, I did this with healing because I was taught a bunch of garbage about healing and sickness and all of that, and so I looked in the Bible.
In the actual Bible.
And when you want to know what is true about sex, you can look in the Bible, and it's not just the Song of Solomon. Proverbs has one of my favorite verses about sex, but there's
let the wife of your youth or let her breast satisfy you always. Is that in Proverbs?
Let her breast satisfy you at all times, and may you always be intoxicated by her love. That doesn't sound very duty. Yeah, it does not sound like you have duty sex.
Yeah.
It does not sound like it's a big pain and hassle for the wife. It sounds pretty freaking awesome. But if you look in Song of Solomon, I don't see where we get off saying what we say, because the woman is the one who starts off expressing her intense sexual desire for the man. And it's probably mostly her throughout the book.
Look at the book of Ruth.
Yeah.
Ruth goes and fully climbs into bed with Boaz.
Right.
And is like, will you go ahead and marry me? I mean.
And that's every guy's dream. But they're told, nah, it's not going to happen.
No, she doesn't want that. Yeah. It needs to change, basically. Well, and it needs to be, it needs to become worth the fight and worth the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to become people, it doesn't change. People won't change things unless it's really at a critical mass and now actually hurting their life. So I would argue that it already is, but for whatever reason, it hasn't gotten bad enough for the church to be wait, let's go ahead and talk about this. And who knows the reasons for that. But also you were saying how all these books should be on the chopping block.
Except for The DNA of a Man. That should be
a great
prominent on your bookcase.
Written by a sexy, sexy man.
Super sexy.
Oh my gosh. Did you just
I just purred.
It's so gross.
Sexy
that does not
meter just dropped to the floor.
Boop, boop, boop. Down the rungs of the ladder.
Or the old Mario sound effect when he goes down the sewage pipe tube.
Yeah, totally down the sewage pipe. A lot of Christian authors and pastors and thinkers and stuff like that, they like to read other Christian authors and thinkers and pastors. And so one thing we have going on right now is they all quote each other too. and a lot of them quote the, kind of up the totem pole of the great names who've gone before. So I know Dr. Dobson, right? He wrote some stuff about marriage and stuff way back in the 70s. And all the current big names who write marriage books in the Christian realm have all read his stuff, and they quote him and for instance, the 72-hour rule, which I don't know if people have heard about, but the idea that basically a man scientifically must have sex every 72 hours ere it causes him pain. it's described in some books as literally after 72 hours, he's climbing the walls because he just has to get release in some way.
Not me. I'm doubled over because it feels like I got kicked in the balls.
You're doubled over. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that whole concept was written by Dr. Dobson in like the 70s and has been quoted by a bunch of people ever since. And what I love about Sheila and her team is they went and like they looked for the medical articles to back this up. And they were like, yeah, there's nothing. Like it's just not there. That it causes him pain and must happen for his health. That's not backed by science.
Right.
So, but it keeps getting repeated in Christian literature as if it is backed by science, because surely Dr. Dobson must not be questioned, right? So yeah, I mean, Focus on the Family recently just backed another marriage book that is like really bad too. So, or that's like has some really unhealthy advice in it.
Yeah.
So not a great track record going on there, old Dr. Dobson.
Yeah.
So that's an issue too. I feel like it's kind of like a cesspool of like everybody just feeding off of each other and then giving advice down to us little bottom dwellers at the bottom of the pond. And it's like, oh, none of this is actually correct.
No.
They're just all saying it. So we believe that it must be true because this guy over here says it, and this big pastor over here says it, and this big pastor over here says it, and Dr. Dobson said it, so it must be true.
And they
and it's
slap
not.
Bible verses on things, and then we are like think that, oh well, this must be Christian because there's Bible verses in there. And honestly, to me, what all of that sounds like, what you're just describing, is a man unable to man up and go get what he wants. And so he's got to come up with a theology to try to force his wife to give him what he wants. It sounds like a man who can't man up. And it makes a man sound weak. Makes a man sound... And you guys know, at Man Warrior King, we don't believe in weakness. Not to say that I am perfect or walk around in complete strength all the time. No, I'm working. But men are not to be weak. Men are not to be needy. Men are not to be limping around until they get their next fix.
Well, and especially in Christ, right?
Yeah, no, yeah.
You can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. So you can't make it more than 72 hours, God forbid?
That's right. Yeah, because you're like a man of identity. Your identity is that I'm a man who can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I'm more than a conqueror. I am complete. I am complete in Jesus. I'm not complete right after having an orgasm, as long as it was within the 72-hour window. That's BS. And so, Corrie, questions.
Yes.
And you guys should listen to her answer these questions, because I can talk to you about sex all I want, but she's the one who really actually has the stuff worth listening to, because she can tell you
what the questions
what's
are gonna be.
actually attractive or what's not. No, it's not scary.
Okay.
It's just the first one. I'm trying to decide which one is the first one. Okay, the first one is, what does a man need to do in order to foster his wife desiring sex in a way where it's actually obvious, right? Because I know that deep down, women really do want sex, but it might not be readily noticeable at the surface in a marriage at a certain time if there's a lot of pain and strife going on.
So what does a man need to do to what?
In order to, like, foster that kind of environment where she begins to display a desire for him?
Well, that is a huge question.
Maybe it's too big of a question. Maybe I should have
I'm not
started
like a
the whole
licensed,
episode.
Psychotherapist or something.
Okay, so what do I need to do?
Well, hang on. I still have an answer for it, though, because I am that brilliant.
Wait, just tell me what I need to do. So
Yeah, right. Just tell me, please. Just tell me exactly
I'll
what
take
you do.
notes.
You got to get to know her. You need to know what she is literally telling you she wants. I don't personally have a whole lot of friends who are women who are like, I don't know, just like anything. Who just don't have thoughts about what they would and wouldn't like in life and in the world. So across the board, if you're like, oh gosh, man, I want to get my wife to want me. Okay, well, what is she asking for? What is she needing? It might just be that you're not knowing her very well. And you guys aren't communicating.
And what if a guy feels like he's trying to do, he's doing a bunch of stuff. He's
great,
serving her. He's
Good.
Trying to do all of those things that she wants, but it still feels like there's nothing there.
Okay. Well, I mean, I suppose I would say clearly it's still not enough. I mean, not that I'm not trying to tell men to just serve crazy women who are, who are being abusive or whatever. But there comes a point where it's I'm doing everything I ought to do and she's still not doing what she ought to do. I mean, that's kind of hard to quantify. How can you be I can't be sure that he's doing everything that needs to be done, so that I think that kind of mentality can be dangerous, to be but I'm doing everything I know how to do and it's still not working. I would challenge that mindset in and of itself, right? Because that's still looking at her as a vending machine. I'm putting in everything I should be putting in, and she's not literally putting out. So that's still objectifying her and coming to her as a I put money in, soda come out, right? So that's the wrong, I would say that's the wrong way to be thinking about it in the first place.
So it sounds like there's a couple of things. One is when you said get to know her, find out what she wants, right? And fulfill those things.
Yeah.
But that in and of itself may not be enough, because there can be a wrong mindset that you're doing that with.
Yeah, because if you're trying to get to know her so that you can have sex, you're trying to do this so you can have sex, you're trying to do all the right things so you can have sex, she's still gonna feel objectified.
Right.
The point is intimacy, which is so much bigger than sex.
Because, and what it takes is not that for either partner to be only existing in order to get something from the other one.
Right.
That can't lead to intimacy. So
right.
It sounds like what you're saying is that a man needs to just figure out his life on his own, and from that place of having some personal inner identity and strength, to then be able to get to know what she wants more effectively. And
well, yeah, because what's the goal? Is sex the goal?
Yeah, no. Right. I'm just kidding. No.
Is sex supposed to be the goal, though?
Of all things? Or what do you mean?
Of him wanting to better himself.
Oh, no. Although I will say it's a very strong motivator. Okay. But it's not it's the worshipped goal. It's not it's
no, the motivator isn't actually sex, right? The motivator is acceptance and esteem of who you are, is the wanting of you, right?
Yes.
That's the motivator. Sex is the product of that. So, but if you're doing it just to get sex, then that's how people came up with this bad theology in the first place.
Right.
You'll just come up with a new bad theology.
Right.
If just the act of is the goal, it will always be void of the depth of connection and closeness and intimacy. And because what you're wanting is to be seen as who you actually are and esteemed in that place and wanted in that place and desired in that place. That sex comes out of that. But what that is like being seen for the man that you are actually presenting, you know? And so that's the motivator.
Yeah.
And so if you get off track of that and sex itself, just intercourse becomes the motivator, then you're going to get squirrely with religion.
And that's the thing, like, that's where it becomes a tricky thing, you know, for guys to try to figure out what it is that their wife needs or wants. Because so often that's actually steps beyond where maybe some of them are at. Right? Because those things can all be done from that place that you're saying to try to get something, which is where I went wrong of like trying to, you know, buy you flowers and do all the romantic things and stuff. And you just didn't it didn't go anywhere.
Well, because it felt like that vending machine that I was talking about. It was like, look at all this good I'm putting in. Now give me what I want.
Right.
And that's not actually healthy marriage.
No. You have to be able to just be like, yeah, I'm putting in a buttload of good, and that's pretty freaking awesome. And like,
I mean, I would say, like, we're putting in.
No, but I'm just talking about in a man, like, yes, of course we are.
Yeah.
But in just an individual man's mind, like, if you're not going to get emotionally entangled and stuff like that, like thinking about, okay, are we putting in all the good? Because if we're not, there's a problem. You kind of sometimes you just have to focus in on yourself, right? So that's what I mean. I don't mean
I'm putting in everything I can because that is who I am.
Yeah, right.
And that is who I've been called to be.
Right.
And because I have enough through Jesus. Period.
Right.
And I'm not going to run out. And, you know, I mean, for some of these marriages that you know of, that you have talked with and stuff like that, like, if you say there's like women who just are not wanting it, whatever, and like men want to know how to bust this wide open, right? I completely forgot my point. I think I'm getting tired. It's just completely, it fell out.
Well,
it's gone.
I've been known to have that effect.
Oh my gosh. What was I going to say? It's gone.
For the men who are in that place where it's like, how do I get sex to start actually happening, basically?
Oh, okay, maybe it's back a little bit. I mean, what if they weren't married at all? What if they weren't married right now? Would they be turning to other things? Like, is it just that sex and release and whatever needs to happen? Or is it that is the drive pursuing this intimacy with this particular woman? Or is it pursuing quote unquote intimacy with a woman, right? Which is just intercourse or, you know, online stuff, right? So my question is, like, if you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, God forbid, and I don't want this for any marriage, but men, you could make it. You could make it if she said no forever, right? If she's just really not having it, like, you could make it. And that wouldn't be right and that would be unfortunate, and that would be depriving one another and all these things. But the man who says, well, this is the man I'm going to be, is pursuing intimacy with just her alone, and pursuing actual intimacy, which is broad spectrum intimacy, not just intercourse. You could make it. And that sounds really awful, I'm sure. And I don't wish it on anybody. And I don't think that would be right. But the point my point is a man willing to do that? Because that's the kind of man he is.
And that's actually a question that I have sometimes asked men. Like, do you want to be in this marriage or do you not? Like, that's where we have to start before we talk about anything else. Because you can't operate feeling like you're stuck, feeling like you're a victim. So are you choosing this woman, knowing where you are at with her right now, knowing where she's at right now?
And if she's saying hardcore no.
And then are you choosing, or are you going to choose that, or are you going to choose not?
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a question, like that's not a fun question.
No, that's really, really sad. And I want all those marriages to get healing. But my point is, it's not just to try to get sex to happen. And that shouldn't be the basis of our Christian advice, our Christian books, our theology, is to just get sex to go ahead and happen, just to get intercourse to happen. It should be building intimacy and healing these places of brokenness. I guarantee you there isn't a woman who's just like, you know what, never again, it's over, no more sex, who isn't dealing with some serious brokenness stuff, some serious trauma and betrayal, possibly by her husband, possibly by other men in her life or other women in her life, like possibly dealing with massive negative self-talk about herself, from herself, like mental health issues. Like, you don't have a woman who's just like, no, I've decided to just be a horrible human being and I'm going to just tell my husband no forever, but I'm going to stay married to him and make his life utter hell. Like, that's, I mean, maybe, but again, if there is a woman who literally is thinking that, then at the very least, there might be some sort of like mental something going
institution?
on. No, just like a mental health thing, you know, of some kind. But like, that would be very, very abnormal, I think.
Yeah.
I think what we've got is a pandemic, if I can use that word,
we hate the word pandemic.
Of women.
It's usually a fake.
No, this one's real. Of women feeling very shut down.
Yeah.
Very afraid, very guarded, very confused, very used. And like, any of those words should, I think, should make a husband shudder with like, oh my gosh, my wife better not be feeling any of those things. Not while I can do something about it. So do something about it.
Yeah.
And like, that she will be very thankful.
Translated, man up.
Yeah, man up and make space for her to heal. Man up and sometimes shut up, because she might need some space to heal. Like mental and physical space. Like releasing her from your timetable of when this should all be fixed by.
Because even like, so we'll end it in a minute too.
Okay.
But it's a tough thing for a man who is like, yeah, but I don't know, I really want to have sex.
Yeah.
But so the idea of giving up the timetable, releasing the pressure, releasing the expectation can be hard. But the truth is, do you want it just because you begged for it, or just because you stomped your foot for it? Not really. A man wants the kind of sex that's like, yeah, I just came home from war and my woman is super happy to see me and wants me. And like that, I mean, that's a much different feel
Yeah.
than, okay, we fought about it for a while. And so now she's capitulating.
Or let's put it this way. If you want to be the hero, she might be trapped in a tower. And the tower is trauma and all this other stuff. She might be trapped in a tower even though you already married her. So are you going to help get her out? Or are you just going to stand outside mad at her for being in a tower far away from you?
I know what I've done before.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think women are very strong and we're not all just damsels in distress, but there are places of like massive strongholds and like we've discussed just earlier tonight, bad teachings, really a lack of places we could turn to get good teachings, that wasn't just the world. You know, I mean, there's Cosmo magazines and I read them, but they still didn't help. And so there's places we can turn to, but it's not actually beating down the strongholds that are literally Satan's attack against women's sexuality. And so consider that if you're upset with your wife for not moving toward you, perhaps she's being held captive and perhaps you could help.
Yeah. And
you might need to tear down the wall one brick at a time.
And yeah. And a lot of times, though, where you can help is in this article that I read about a married man's sexual epiphany, where it talked about how in order to go from being horny to being happy, so horny meaning pent up and so wanting it but never getting it, to being happy is to shift your expectations from your wife to yourself and begin to expect from yourself what kind of man you're going to be, what kinds of things you're going to do, what kind of life you are going to live. Expect more of yourself and stop putting all of that pressure on her
to answer that question.
Yeah. And I don't think you can do a lot of removing bricks from the tower until you do that. If you can start to become your own man, you can begin to have more of the presence of mind and more of like a healing touch rather than a destructive touch. And that's absolutely crucial. So we're going to wrap it up. And we're going to have more conversations about this, though. And I think at some point in the coming weeks, we should have a conversation more geared towards those guys and women, whoever listen, who are in a better place, but still about sex. And it's still about how to make it a thing that is actually really a blessing and desirable to both.
Yeah.
That's beyond just the like crisis situations.
Well, because crisis situations get a lot of airtime.
They do.
And we've had seasons of that for us and seasons of not. And I think overall, even from the Great Sex Rescue and stuff like that, like it was encouraging to read, even though there were some disappointing statistics, but overall it was like more than half at least of Christian marriages are happy and connected. And so that is a celebration, right? I think it should be a lot more than just 50. I think it was like just the 50 something %. I think it should be a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And I think it can be. And I think that, that is the promise and that's where we're moving towards. But it's not like, oh, no Christian marriages are happy. And so definitely, I think I would agree with that because even for those that are like, oh gosh, we're not in this really hard spot, it can actually still get better.
Yeah.
Because that's the kingdom, right? The kingdom is never just stagnant.
Right. Further in, further up.
Yeah.
To quote Aslan. Mm-hmm. It also has some sexual sounding connotations to it.
It was not lost on me.
I thought about it after I said it, though.
It
was not on
It hit
purpose.
me right away. Yeah. My mind's in the gutter.
Your mind is in the gutter, right where I want it.
Oh, gross.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for listening this evening. Don't forget that book is The Great Sex Rescue by Sheila Ray Gregoire. Also, she has the Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, and her husband has the Good Guy's Guide to Great Sex.
You can pre-order them. They're coming out in
and
a
they don't
couple
even
days.
know that we're doing this commercial
I know.
for them.
You're welcome.
Maybe we'll send them this podcast episode, but pick that up. But also, I want to remind you, if you haven't yet, grab a copy of The DNA of a Man. I continue to get a lot of feedback from just guys that say that it's been life-changing for them. And it talks about a lot of this stuff that Corrie and I have been talking about tonight, of how does a man become that kind of attractive husband and not just a whiny husband. I've been both. And
only one really is fun.
And only one is fun. I would like to say and only one survives, but the other one comes around every now and then. But it's less and less. And anyway, pick up the book. You won't regret it. If you do, sorry. Anyway, God bless you. Love you, gentlemen. Talk to you later. This is Matt Halleck signing off and thanking you again for being a part of the Man Warrior King community. If you want more, head over to manwarriorking.com. And please remember to take just a couple seconds to subscribe on iTunes and to leave a 5-star rating and a review so that more and more men can join us as we become awesome. You are a kingdom man. Go out, take more ground, push back darkness. Remember, you bring value into your home, your work, and your circle. You are not a taker, you are a giver. Abundance is your atmosphere.